It's year 2023, June 9th. Uh, the weather today was kind of bad. It was cloudy at first, and then it started to rain towards, I think, the afternoon. It was very windy as well at noon, but the rain just completely overtook the wind actually. There was like no wind, and it was just pure rain. uh, when it was time for me to go off work. Uh, it was quite an uneventful day. Didn't really do much. In fact, I think I just didn't have anything to do at work today, so honestly, it was quite boring. But as usual, just reading some manga at work, just uh, just getting it by, I guess. Nothing new. But towards the second half, which is like after lunch break, uh, of my work time, I started to read this manga. It's called I think it's called Kowloon Generic Romance. Uh, and the author is someone that uh I'm not really familiar with, but the art style feels like very has a very unique style, I guess. And one of their other works actually had an anime adaptation, and it looked like one of those shows that are just very comfy, and it was also like a romance show, but it was something that seemed to be like very comfy and very like how should I say this? This is like a relaxing kind of like show where it's like a lot more kind of like emotional, uh like how should I say this? It's like less explicit, I guess, in terms of like how people show their emotions. I think like things feel like a lot more about how the reader or the watcher or the viewers kind of like interpret the situation, and how things are more shown and less uh, told, right? Uh, and this manga, Kowloon Generic Romance, is basically like that. Is as I was expecting. It's very much almost kind of like poetic in a sense. Like the dialogues are there, but I feel like there's but when reading it, it didn't feel like there was a lot of dialogue, and there were a lot more like actions between the characters more than anything. And when dialogue do come up a lot, it's usually used for some kind of like exposition for like a plot point or whatever, and it's used, I think, like quite sparingly. Like when the dialogue starts to hit you, or like at least when it starts to kind of like mount up, it's really there. Like when people need to talk and explain things, it's all in basically one chapter, and then next chapter it basically goes into the usual like less dialogue and more showing sort of storytelling style. But anyways, uh like basically, like the story is not finished yet, right? And I've only caught up to, I think, chapter 54 of the manga, and it kind of left me feeling a bit like melancholic. I don't know why, but it's one of those. It's a story that I kind of went in expecting something to kind of like be lighthearted, but it actually turned out to be something a lot more, I guess, dramatic than I was expecting. And some of the plot points, what I feel like they're alluding to, is quite a tragic story, actually. And I think that's kind of like what made me feel a bit, I guess, a bit down. in the afternoon. And then when it was like time to go home, accompanying with the cloudiness and the rain, I think it was just everything kind of came together, and I didn't really exactly feel like the best. Not in a bad way. I just didn't really feel like, how should I say this? As energized as before, I guess. Felt a bit more slow than usual. I wanted to take things like at a slower pace. On the way home, I was listening to some podcast, and the podcast itself was quite energetic. It's just people talking about stuff, but it's trying to it's a podcast that's like more focused on just like being fun and stuff, talking about funny stuff. But like as I continue to listen to it, I feel like I just wasn't really in the mood for it, despite how initially I was like, I really don't want to kind of like be in this mood. But as kind of as I was on the transit, like slowly it feels like everything in my mind, like everything, like the noises, external noises and the internal noises are all kind of like clashing at each other. Like they're all trying to kind of like overtake each other. Like I'm trying to kind of like refresh or like move my mind towards something else with listening to the podcast and the car noises, the train noises, the people talking, all these external voices and noises kind of like bring me out of whatever internal mood I was in, while my internal kind of like, I guess my internal voice is telling me something else. So wants me to kind of like be in that state of mind just a bit longer, just to like kind of like embrace it and kind of like just soak that feeling in. And that's what I did. After getting off the train, I was waiting for the bus. And that's when I realized how like the ring sounds and the car sounds, the bus sound, the people talking sounds is getting really, really loud. And it's not helping when I also have the podcast playing. That's also kind of like, not really loud, but kind of like a high energy kind of like thing was going on there. And it's just became a very irritating. And I can't really shut down the noises like outside. I can't really, tell the bus to stop making engine noises or whatever. So I just turn off the podcast and kind of like just let my mind, I guess, wander. And soaking in whatever ambience there were. And let my kind of like internal voices just take its course and do its thinking. And whatever it thought of, it's the usual stuff. It's basically repeating the same things that I've talked about before as well, where it's just acknowledging my own issues. And it's almost like a mantra, I guess, where I just keep on repeating the same things. And it's almost as if like just by repeating these things, it's going to become reality. It's a weird thing I do. I think it started when I was like a lot younger. I was in, I guess, elementary school, where I realized like I wasn't really smiling as much. I always kind of like not really have a frown, but just like kind of like expressionless, and I didn't really like that. So I tried my best to kind of like just smile, just whenever it felt appropriate, just like try to smile a bit more, even though I might not actually feel like smiling. And I guess, after, I guess, maybe 10 years of doing that, like eventually it almost becomes like habitual for me to like smile just here and there, almost like out of nowhere, even though I realize that I am doing kind of like a fake smile. I don't know. It's just something weird I do. And it's just like almost like I feel like it's almost like a form of, lying to yourself until it becomes true sort of situation. And I'm basically doing the same thing with like other stuff as well. It's one thing about like smiling, and I'm also trying to do it with the idea of bringing myself lower. That's kind of like what I'm trying to do. I wonder if it's gonna work. Just like repeating, kind of like not really self-degrading, but just like more. How should I say this? It's not really self-degrading stuff that I am saying to myself, but just stuff that kind of like calms me down at situations, right? Things, it really is kind of like a mantra. Just things that kind of like I say to myself, just because like it's the situation that kind of like calls for it. Or if it's like situations where it's like I kind of like I kind of like just say just because I have the mental break to say these things. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I guess it is kind of like a habitual thing. It's like I guess I do it. I guess I do that kind of thing instead of like how people kind of like fidget or they spin their pen. I have no idea how to spin a pen. Or it's like, just those things people do when their mind is kind of like elsewhere. Their body kind of like do these things that kind of like that just happen. Whether it's like they shake their leg, they fidget their fingers, they maybe have a fidget toy. And for me, it's just like all thoughts. I also like shake my legs a lot, but but that's usually when I'm very bored. I do that. If I'm like thinking about something, it's more, or it's like I'm more when I'm like in a mood for more like kind of like thought focused stuff. My thoughts kind of like automatically lean towards a certain kind of like thought. Sometimes it's self-degrading, sometimes it's like less, it's similar to degrading, but I wouldn't really say it's something that's like very harsh. I wouldn't really say something too harsh to myself. But yeah, that's kind of like what happened. It's kind of, I don't know if it's like a comfortable feeling or not. I feel like it's been quite a while since the last time I kind of like became more quiet. Because like today, honestly, for most of the day, I was just, because like usually I am very much a person that would just like talk to myself for no reason. Like if I'm cooking or even just doing like the simplest things, I would just like talk to myself, like say my thoughts out loud, right? Not even like for the purpose of like organizing my thoughts. I just say it just because, almost like I'm narrating something, I guess. But today I kind of like just kept my mouth shut and I just didn't really even think too much, right? And I kind of like just let my body move while just listening to the ambience, the noises that in nature are not like loud or disturbing or anything that could be like irritating. And it was, I don't know if I should say comforting. Maybe it was kind of comforting. I don't know. I guess it's kind of like a, not really nostalgic, but it's a familiar feeling. I used to do that sometimes in the past when I would be kind of like in the mood for silence, and I would just like be outside and just like listening to, well, just outside noises. And my mind would, and for the most part, be silent, but just sit there and just like do nothing. I used to do that a lot in high school, where I would just kind of like, my mind just like wouldn't even think of anything. Like it was just like a complete state of nothingness that my mind would be in. And my eyes would just like, I don't know, staring off somewhere, 1,000-yard stare. And my mind isn't really thinking of anything until someone like kind of like snaps me out of it. It's kind of like one of those things. And I kind of want to do that again. I feel like my mind has been, like, I've been thinking too many things recently. Especially with how, like, the last few times I mentioned how I feel like I am becoming more and more, I'm slowly learning how to, like, integrate myself into society. And in doing so, I kind of, like, have to basically think or be a lot more conscious about a lot more things as well. About myself, about the people around me, about like the environment that's around me, about my future, my career, all these different things. But I feel like sometimes I really just need that silence to take that break. And I can't really voluntarily do that. And it really needs something like special to kind of like trigger me into that kind of like state of mind, to kind of like not forcefully, but like flow me into it. Just like what happened today. I was like, something makes me feel melancholic, and then the weather is kind of like also kind of perfect for that kind of thing as well. So all these kind of like conditions just created a perfect situation for me to quiet down. And I'm glad, and you know, looking back, like now talking about it, I'm kind of glad I had that experience. It's pretty nice. But I know it's like, you know, I gotta take a sleep later. And after waking up, it's probably gonna be like same old, same old. Not really sure like when's gonna be the next time I get to take a break like that, but oh well, at least it happened on a Friday, I guess. It's the weekend, and it's a pretty nice way to, I guess, start the weekend off. I'll see how it goes in the future. Yeah, there's a few things I think I want to. I've been thinking a lot in my mind in the past week or so, but I don't think I'm ready to talk about them yet. We'll see about it in the future.